Good morning, listeners and viewers. Welcome to Conversation with our Bishop for today, July 10th, 2025. What a beautiful, beautiful hymn, I would refer to it as a hymn, that has begun our program today, just for today. And maybe many of you, the older ones, those of you who are at home, would remember this song. Lord, for tomorrow and its needs I do not pray. Keep me, my Lord, from stain of sin just for today. So much in this song. So I ask you to refer to it again and allow it to become a prayer in your own heart. Because as we get older, we recognize, Lord, one day at a time. But we greet all of you with the joy of the Lord. We greet all of you with the rains that come down upon our earth and to water the soil and to cause our rivers to flow again. I hope you've been having a good week. I know for some of you are panicking because we are in the hurricane season, and really and truly, perhaps some of you, really have not gotten over and continue to suffer in that way. But I pray that the Lord will help us to take it one day at a time and bless him at the end of each day. So we welcome our bishop. It is his program, really. As I said, we have to welcome the bishop. Of course, we do have to welcome him, and it's an opportunity that we have each week. I hope you've had a good week. I was saying to him just before the program, God has blessed you with measurably good health, because I see you in so many functions and so on, and you are there as a sign. Perhaps you don't think so, but you are there as a presence, as a sign. So I thank God for you and pray that he would continue to keep you in his love and care, and that what the program holds for us today by way of content would really be a blessing to all our listeners and viewers. So we begin with our bishop. We have begun.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody, all you beautiful people who listen every week. I hope you get a lot of grace for the punishment that you endure. But anyway, no, thank you.
Absolution one time.
Very much, yes, you could get absolution one time. Yes, but really it's been, in a strange kind of a way, I'm looking forward to this program in a way that I sometimes don't look forward to the program. But there's so much going on around us. And I said it last week and I say it again. Being at the graduations has been a wonderful experience for me as the 2 weeks now have unfolded. And the last one was on Wednesday at Newlow, all the way up to Sotas. Getting up there was a little bit difficult, but the church itself was beautifully decorated. All the various courses that we can do at Newlow were there. And significantly, these courses were placed against the altar. And that can be seen as symbolic, because what they were in fact doing was offering the work of the last year and a half, I understand, to the Lord. So we thank God, especially for those who make that work possible. I sat with some members of the executive committee of the school, and Father Andrew Barnard is the chairman of the board, but he wasn't there because he's on a bit of a holiday. But Mrs. Cheryl Curtin, who has done yeoman service on that board, with her HR experience, she was there along with Dr. John, Right, yes. These are people who have served long and served well. Yes. So we thank God for them. Of course, Sister Margaret has been there for quite a while. I don't know how much longer she will be with us, because she's obviously somebody who has a future going up and on. But I really have to thank the staff at Newlow, because they seem to make such a difference, A lot of the young people who used to go to Newlow long ago were going to Newlow because people made them feel, but they can't do better than that. Now, Newlow is a choice. And people choose to go to Newlow because the courses are improving, the sense, particularly because of the adolescent development program, which Sister Marianne leads, the young people are coming to a better sense of themselves. And I wish that something like that program could be added to the course at SGU even, because young people making those transitions need to ask the questions that are asked relative to life skills. So how we might be able to do that is another question. But we thank God for these moments when we can have signs of hope, And NULO has a particular feature which the other schools don't have, and that is they have this year it was 4 students talking about their experience at NULO. One of them was a young woman, tall, elegant young woman, and she says, "I'm in construction." And I must say, it's hard to imagine her on a construction site, because she really carries herself with. When people thought of construction sites and women, they usually think of a big burly lady there who could knock the fellas off their feet and so on. But she, slim, elegant, and yet she's excited to be in construction. And that's what you want to be able to do for these young people, to give them options that maybe the world doesn't see them as taking, but in NULO you get a chance to do something that you really want to do. So we continue, partly as a tribute to Bishop Charles, who started it all. We will continue with NULO. NULO has been receiving much help from various sources, including the government of Grenada. Hopefully, I don't know if it will ever be on its own feet as a self-supporting thing. But that's part of the dream. Because if you are teaching people how to do hospitality and so on, one hopes that in teaching you may be able to develop the kind of institution that is self-supporting. So to all of you who graduated yesterday, congratulations, but also forward. The journey has now begun, and what you have to aim to do is to improve your skills every step of the way, so that by the time you are a mature adult in your 40s, you're on top of your craft, your skill, and on top of the world. God bless you.
Thank you. NULO has always been occupied a very special place, and it has attracted the ecumenical presence as well, which is a good sign of what the church continues to offer. And I really like the life skill element that has been, I think it's one of the prominent features that would influence their behavior and their attitude to life. And many people would comment that persons whom they employ from NULO are, they are really impressed by the quality of their work and their attitude. So again, we want to, like Bishop, to congratulate all of you who graduated, and may God continue to guide you as you make your mark in our world. Okay? Now, we were looking on and saw the sword turning ceremony. At least it was mentioned at the graduation, and there is something on our webpage that spoke of this, the new school, St. David's Catholic Secondary, to be relocated and built. I do have some questions to follow that, but you were present at the sword turning ceremony in Marlmount. So it's a very new location and off the beaten track, you might want to say, although where the school is also, but it is like a proximity to Vincent's and areas around. It seemed much easier to be able to get there. So all of these things will have to be considered in terms of how these students get to the new location when it is completed. You were there, and I was looking on, and I heard many things, and you did commend the government for cooperating and to have the vision to help in that way. But from the church's standpoint, help us to...
Well, from the church's standpoint, it's part of the challenge of education. If I am excited about anything, I am excited about the prospects for education. I think the church has a tremendous responsibility with regard to education, and I don't think we are fulfilling it yet. It costs a lot to do what has to be done. And how do we get the people, because it costs money to make a contribution in education. And we are at a point where I know in some situations the churches have abandoned schools, have handed over schools and so on. I hope Grenada never has to do that, you know. And one of the challenges we face, which I said in my own contribution, is that we have a shared responsibility, what all the churches have decided to call partnership. You have, I don't know if you know, there's a group called GADSB, Grenada Association of Denominational School Boards. Interesting way. So everybody calls it GADSB, G-A-D-S-B. D-S-B. Grenada Association of Denominational School Boards. Brilliant. And we are agreed on certain things. And one of the things that we are agreed on is that we're not just stakeholders. We are partners in the process of education. And although the Catholic Church has 30 schools, the Methodists and the Presbyterians have single-digit numbers, we still remain in partnership. And I'm very happy that one of the things that has happened in recent years is that we made a conscious decision to try and work together. Now, that is something which some people don't understand, and I know that some people feel, oh, we are the Catholic Church and we should not be dragging our feet on some things. But I am convinced that the one thing you don't want to have happen is for forces like public servants and politicians to divide us. So if we can find common agreement on certain things and work from that common agreement, it will be better. So I really have to compliment Archdeacon Marshall, Osbert James, Reverend Dr. James, the Methodist, Silbert Prescott, Reverend Prescott, now it's Reverend Harry. But the Seventh-day Adventists are with us on this as well, and they have built a school. The government has helped them, yes, but they have been able to find the funds to build a school. And I think it's a very, very important question, which I intend to ask the bishops, I've already asked in some quarters, to put to people in the United States. If the Seventh-day Adventist Church can find funds overseas to maintain their school program, I wonder, why can't we? You know, why can't we Catholics? You know, because Catholics are putting a lot of money into political campaigns, and I'm quite scandalized when I see the amount of money being put into political campaigns. And I think it is much more the will of the Lord that Catholics should put their money into education, because education is part of the fundamental mission of the Church. So how that will work out in the future, God alone knows. It will take some time, but we have to lay the foundations. I felt very happy to see, you know, you working with public servants, a project officer in the ministry, for example. Wonderful person. Her name slips me at the moment.
She's a young lady. Yeah.
So we collaborate, we work together. But let me say this. Parents and family, that is something that keeps coming up all the time. You send your children to a school, but you must still maintain control over those children. You must guide them. You must help them when they come home angry about this, that, or the other, to guide them to see that they have a role to play in the resolution of their anger. You know, these are important things. So what we've come across is that there's a partnership between church, state, and family in education. Each of us has responsibilities which we must fulfill. The church is caught right now because the church's responsibility is a responsibility in terms of faith and morals. But the morals of the society is not necessarily the morals of the church. And this is where there's a conversion thing that has to happen. I am myself convinced that the evangelization of our schools is something that we have to encourage and work with our children to do, and that should be part of the process of confirmation. But that's a difficult thing to handle, and we haven't yet found a way forward for that.
I just wanted to ask because when there was the St. Peter's RC School that's in Corinth, and the government rebuilt that school, it was changed to Corinth Government School. And that's one of the concerns, is like where, as you said, there's a partnership, but the church's partnership has to be clear to the parents, to the Catholic community, that we have that understanding. It is true that they are helping to rebuild these schools, but at the same time, we stand, it seems as though we stand the, what word should I use? It's like we could lose in terms of the ownership of the schools.
Yeah, we could. We could, and I can't...
This is troubling.
I can't close... Well, I mean, I'm not too sure what you mean by troubling.
Yeah?
It's a challenge. Because, for instance, I have said to the parishes, you have to take a certain interest in and a responsibility for the schools. But a number of principals have said they find it very difficult to get any help from the parish, right? And I keep saying to principals and to priests, that's a matter of relationship. You have to build relationship, but you can't be building relationship and demanding certain things. You know, I mean, if you're in a personal relationship and you begin demanding, the other party says, well, to hell with you. You know.
What would they be demanding? What would they be demanding, really?
What could who be demanding?
An example of what?
Well, an example of that is when a manager decides, well, I must know everything that's going on in the school. Yes and no, you know, because one of the positions that I have taken personally, and I don't know if my successor will follow through on that, is that when it comes to the running of the school, from a Catholic standpoint, the principal is the main person, right? And that's why we have to pay a lot of attention to who becomes principals in our schools. You know, and that's not always easy because there are all kinds of different ways in which that can be manipulated. But if you have good principals, and we have some really marvelous principals in some of our schools, then they are able to work with the priest and to work with the ministry, and things move smoothly, you know. But if you don't have the right principle, chaos could ensue. But I've been saying this to my Vicar General, that we have to find ways to work this in dialogue, right? We have a few examples that we will have to work with in the next few years. Munich RC, Holy Cross RC is one school where the people were very clear about what they wanted, and they wanted it to remain a Catholic school. My understanding is in the case of Corinth, there was not that much enthusiasm for keeping it as a Catholic school. But in Holy Cross, there is that eagerness. St. David's, it's there partly because, at least the way I get it, it's the principal and some teachers who keep the school what it is with its Catholic identity. Now, over the next year, I hope that we will be able to find the right leadership at the level of the board to push these things forward. But
it's interesting that you said that, because we're saying we have to prepare, because when teachers or persons who apply for the post of principal or teachers, it's said that we tend to lose the edge because some of the other faiths seem to be more prepared. And it is a light for us to decide what are we going to do. If people have the interest in becoming principals, then it's a part where we have to help and to prepare them, you know, so that they can assume those positions as well. But not
if they are open to being helped, and if they are willing to share the Catholic ethos.
Yeah,
that's critical.
Yeah.
you know. But no, you're hitting a point there which is painful for me personally, because I have to admit that you have people who go through the Catholic teaching system and they have never been introduced to what you might call a Catholic ethos for teaching.
I agree.
Because, you know, Jamaica has a training college for Catholic teachers. We don't. I've been talking with Jamaica about the possibility of sending some people there. Or we did it once, and that was to invite people from Jamaica. A particular lady actually was part of it, where we are able to share through the video, the Zoom network, with some of the ideas from that. But
it's a lot of work, as we said.
God, don't remind me. And this is, let me make up one point. These things require money. And I hear people talking all kinds of nonsense about how the church have money, and the church always asks them.
We need vision. We need vision, and to work with that vision as well.
I think the vision is there.
Is there.
It has to be communicated to more people, but ultimately it seems to me we're coming down to money. There are one or two things I would love to do with education, but I don't have the money to do it.
Okay, listeners and viewers, you are listening, I hope, to the content and the deeper questions that may arise in your heart as it relates to Catholic education and what needs to be done.
Before you move on, because we probably need to take a break.
Yes.
I want to, because this is all part of education, I have to say thanks to Mrs. Maria Charles Vivek, who has been Secretary of the Catholic Education Board
of Management,
for the last 4 years. She's done quite a bit of work, but for health reasons she cannot continue, so she has left the post effective the end of last month. That leaves us with a big hole to find somebody to fill that, because the person who must fill it cannot just do what Mrs. Vivek was doing. That's clear to me. A lot more has to be done. And if nobody's willing to do that now for free, you know, when I think of previous people in that post, what they were being paid for it was pittance. So over the next few weeks, we have to give some thought and prayer to that. But I want to wish Mrs. Vivek all the best in her retirement. She was manager of J.W. Fletcher School and was very committed in that regard. She paid her visits to the schools, and I gather did make a solid contribution through that. So we wish her all the best with her health, especially, because she's wonderful, especially, if I might say this here, with her wigs.
I was waiting for that wig talk.
No, I used to look out every time I see Miss Vivek, and every time I hear her voice, I'm looking for the wig.
So listeners and viewers, we take a break at this point on the wig. We'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners and viewers. A conversation with our bishop. We would start off this segment with a call online. So good morning and welcome to
Good morning, Rosina.
Good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Philbert.
And good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, good morning. Well, there are so many things to talk about. There's so many topics, but I'll just mention them, and then Bishop will decide which one is. The month of June was declared by the World Health Organization as Men's Health Week, and June has just gone. And I wish we had time for the past week to have some conversation on that. So, but probably not today. The second thing is our children are home from school, and we have to talk about how to engage them, usefully and profitably as they home from holiday. The third is
Number 12.
the carnival. Carnival is here, and carnival. Well, I'll hope that the church, our church in particular, would have a discussion that carnival is our biggest cultural activity, because culture is how we speak, how we dress, how we eat, what we eat, and how we dance. All is part of our culture, and culture is good. Jesus was born within a certain culture. But probably the one that we should talk about today is the one about the start turning for St. David's Catholic Secondary School. Just a minute, if Bishop decides is that we should talk about or any other thing that I raised.
We were talking about it just now, Michael.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't come on yet.
Oh, you missed it.
Yeah, we were talking about it just now.
Bishop responded. It was
Yes,
part of
yeah.
the program, and Bishop responded.
Yes. But I'd like to make a little term as one who was there from the foundation of that school. And some of these historical things, a lot of people may not know, and because it's not recorded. When the idea came about starting St. David's Catholic Secondary School, there was a deacon called Deacon Lucky Bernard, who was very, very instrumental. Mm-hmm. And he gave out little cards to all and sundry, all throughout St. David's, little donation cards. So you pledge that you'll give $1 a month towards the school. So everybody had a little card, and somebody would collect from this dozen persons. And this was the genesis of the school. And then the Dominicans got two sisters, Sister Moran, and I can't remember the next one named, Rufina would remember her. Sister Moran and another sister, and they started the school in the old presbytery, and what we afterwards called the Marian House. Afterwards, when the school expanded, they started and expanded, they got Tommy Alexander, which is the father of Sister Maureen Alexander, to build the school on the site where it is now. Yeah. People marvel that we could have got a building on a precipice. It was indeed a precipice. And how Tommy Alexander, was it Tommy, his name?
Yes.
Yeah, Tommy Alexander managed that feat of getting a building, and that precipice was nothing but a modern day miracle and genius. So the school was started, and that's how St. David's Secondary School came in. Afterwards, the name was changed to St. David's Catholic Secondary School. Up to now, some people cannot fathom saying St. David's Catholic Secondary School. I always tell people that nobody has a problem saying the Anglican High School. Nobody has a problem saying Montrose Seventh-day Adventist School. But some people have a difficulty in St. David's Catholic Secondary School. Why, I don't know. Oh, I didn't say morning to all the fan clubs who listen. Queen Esther, Teacher Gloria, who is still up in the States. Teacher Gloria in the States still doing for medical treatment. And even my sister, Alice, who listens and tell me, I hear you know.
Keeps you going, keeps you alive.
And then people like Father Kufre I know there's a lady called Salian Fortune, who always listen and tell me that they heard me on the program. So, Bishop, I'll stop there because about St. David's Catholic Secondary School, I am so happy. I did not go to school there. Like the Prime Minister, I went to Presentation Brothers College, but I had a lot of affiliation. My sister went there, and a lot of affiliation with that school, and I know the genesis of it. And I'm very happy that we had this start turning. But I have to say, the final thing I have to say, Bishop, before I'll hand over to you, is that I hope it does not happen like how current St. Peter's RC School, that was the first school I was principal of, St. Peter's RC School. And when they built the new school, they changed the name to Current Government School, and we lost a Catholic school. We lost LOST, a Catholic school, which was very sad to me because it meant so much to me because that's where I was principal first, and I, with fond memories of the teachers who I had in that school. The only one of which I think is alive is that, I don't know if she listens to the program, they call Dennis James. She's married to Mr. Ashby, so she's Dennis Ashby
still
now.
alive, yes.
Yes. Yes, so
you.
Bishop, over to you. And we'll have to leave the other topics for another day, not so?
Yes.
Well, you know something, Michael? You talked out there the history of St. David's Catholic Secondary School. By the way, they love to say SDCSS, which is what the school song puts it. Quite a nice school song, in fact. I think it's teacher Eddie who wrote it. Yes. Yes, so, but you should sit down and put in writing your knowledge of the history of the school.
Yes, so
because as I listened to you, I didn't realize that the school was, it's 50 years old, but it hadn't entered my consciousness that if it's 50 years old, you're talking about the 70s, for its start. And then you think of how it started, from what you just said there. The Kiltegans claim a particular ownership of it, if I might put it that way.
For the Bill Dowling, for the Tom Norton, for the Michael Hoare.
Right.
All this
so all of that needs to be... Kelly, yes. He came back here last year, and he's been here twice, I think, since...
Who is that?
Father Kelly.
Father Kelly.
Oh, yes.
So these things need to be recorded. And I can say that at least at the South Turning, I stood up very strongly about the Catholic identity of the school. But I can't guarantee that. The only people who can guarantee that is the people of St. David's, right, and the Catholic community in Grenada. But let's be clear about one thing. You see what you said there about how it started with tuppence, as we might say, with little coins here and a card and so on, right? If it is to continue, we have to make some contribution to it. If we can show that the contribution that we are making is fruitful in terms of the human beings being formed by the school, we have an argument to present. But if we are just sitting down on the sidelines and saying this is SDCSS, this is a Catholic school, but making no real contribution to the development, then we won't always have a government that, so far as I can understand, all the governments of Grenada have been clear about the Catholic identity of our schools. If there has been problems, the problems have been because people are not willing to stand up, let their voices be heard, and make a contribution so other people manipulate the system to their own advantage. So it's a task, it's a vision, it's a commitment that has to be there. And how we get it, that's another big question, because in many other countries in the world, the same problems we have here are being faced. So we can't just say, well, this bad and that bad. But wherever there are Catholic schools, there are challenges. The United States, people tell me a lot about, look in the United States. But the United States has schools that are Catholic because religious congregations have been funding those schools.
Yes.
The Jesuits have funded a lot of the schools, the Mercy Sisters.
And the Dominicans.
Pardon?
And the Dominicans.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but those that I know is what I'm talking about. But in each of those cases, the religious orders have been able to put money into the schools through the order itself and through the past students' union. And I have made appeals on a number of occasions for both J.W. Fletcher and for St. David's Catholic Secondary School, that somebody has to take it upon themselves to organize the past students to begin to make a contribution to the school. It would be a wonderful thing if the past students' union, in collaboration with the church, could contribute a hall, an assembly hall, to St. David's St. David's Catholic Secondary School, you know.
Hope that's just a slip
St. David's Catholic Secondary School, you know.
Yes.
Erect a hall that can
hall.
be used by the community, right, so that the community knows, you know. And of course that is available for the students, because when you want to have an assembly, if you don't have a hall that can hold all the students, so you're talking about a hall that can hold 500 students that will be there, and if the community wants to have a Saturday evening dance or something like that, within a certain context.
So according to the construction, isn't that catered to?
They don't have the money for it right now.
Okay, so you're making an appeal.
Yeah, I made that appeal when we first looked at the design.
Okay.
And then you have some very important people besides the Prime Minister didn't go there, but you have people like Honorable Adrian Thomas and his wife.
Yeah.
Both of them went to St. David's Catholic Secondary School.
Yeah, that's true. You know, it's a wonderful challenge for church, but let's be clear, you know, I made reference that school would not be where it is today and not be at the point where it is today if the parliamentary representative for the area was not the Prime Minister. Because it has been back and forth, like a, what do they call it, a tennis ball, you know. And but it was because he has been working in the constituency to make sure that certain things got done.
Yes.
And I make no apologies for giving him credit for that.
Yes. So yes, Bishop, the only problem if I could speak with somebody who could do this, because, you know, since my illness, my challenges I have, writing, or even doing something on a computer is very difficult for me.
Yeah. You don't have a little voice recorder?
No, not really.
One of his grandchildren can help him with that.
Yeah.
The recording.
Probably.
Michael Philbert, grandchildren, all you listening?
No, I had to shoo them away because I tell them I go in and talk now. I don't want them.
You had to shoo them away? No.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Philbert, for your contribution to this conversation.
I think we have
invaluable.
to call the program Conversations with the Bishop and Philbert.
Rich in history. So again, there's some work to be done, and the challenge is for us to be able to.
You know the Clooney sisters spent some time there. There was her sister Paul.
Yes, Sister Mary Paul.
Sister Mary Paul.
And Sister Philomena Horan.
Philomena?
Yes.
Right. They were also part of the school. So the school had a lot of religious people at the beginning. So the school has to be a good school.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, the foundation. Yes.
Rutina would agree with that.
Well, I am not a past student of St.
Oh,
David's.
you're not a past. I thought you were.
Anglican High School. That's where I went.
She's one of those.
one of
my family, I have my brother and sister, and my husband and other persons who attended school there.
Yes.
Good products from that school. So let's take a short break at this time, and we will return to read the Gospel for the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time. A very short break.
Amen.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to Conversation with the Bishop. Quite interesting segment before we took the break. So we appeal again for ownership of the two diocesan secondary school. That's J.W. Fletcher and St. David's Catholic Secondary School. We're going to move into the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time for commentary by the Bishop. The Gospel is from Luke. It's Luke 10, 25 to 37. There was a lawyer who, to disconcert Jesus, stood up and said to him, "Master, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered right," said Jesus. "Do this, and life is yours." But the man was anxious to justify himself and said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was once on his way down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of brigands. They took all he had, beat him, and then made off, leaving him half dead. Now a priest happened to be traveling down the same road, but when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. In the same way, a Levite who came to the place saw him and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion when he saw him. He went up and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. He then lifted him onto his own mount, carried him to the inn, and looked after him. Next day, he took out 2 denarii and handed them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and on my way back, I will make good any extra expense you have." Which of these 3 do you think proved himself a neighbor to the man who fell into the brigand's hands? "The one who took pity on him," he replied. Jesus said to him, "Go and do the same yourself." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Oh, Jesus.
Familiar. Familiar, so you don't have to listen to it.
You have to listen.
Right? Oh, you've heard that so many times. It's been dramatized so many times. But I want to suggest this morning in the first place that there are questions there that are addressed to us, or that we have to ask ourselves. Good Master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Have you ever asked that question? And I'm not talking about just as a question in the scriptures. Have you at any point in time been confronted by the meaning of your life, the deeper meaning of your life, to ask the question, Lord, what must I do? Considering who I am with all my strengths, my weaknesses, my faults, my character, what we might call my idiosyncrasies, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And in asking that question, one might say, well, the answer is for everybody. But I want to suggest that at various points in our lives, we are confronted by what eternal life is, And it is in those moments that we have to ask ourselves, what must I do to inherit what I am beginning to see as part of this eternal life question? Let me give you an example of what I mean. Somebody goes on a retreat, and in the course of that retreat, they are confronted with the question, what is heaven like? What is heaven like? And in that moment, they realize that, wait, all a moment, I was thinking of heaven as a place of a reward. These days, there's a word we use a lot, transactional. So I have fundamentally a transactional relationship with God. I do this for you and you give me heaven. But if I understand heaven to be not part of a business transaction with God, But heaven has a relationship with God. That's a different question. The first question, if you understand it that way, is you end up saying, well, I must obey the commandments, right? And as long as I don't disobey the commandments, heaven is mine. But if it is the relationship, and I came across a wonderful moment the other day where one writer was saying, I don't want to go to heaven. It doesn't interest me. Because I want to live with God. I want to live in God. So it's no longer a question of going to a place. It's a question of this sense, And I've often thought it myself, that my last breath should be a breath which I take, and as I breathe out, I breathe into the Spirit of God, the fullness of God's Spirit. That is calling for a different approach to how I experience this journey into eternal life. Right. So when that first question, has its own particular emphasis as we move along. And then, okay, so this man in the exchange, they come to a certain point where Jesus is clear. You do this and life is yours. You must love your neighbor with all your heart, with all your soul. You must love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. That's the Old Testament injunction. But then the man, and listen to how it's put, anxious to justify himself. That's another thing I want you to ask yourself, because a lot of good people spend all their life in their goodness seeking to justify themselves. And we have to be careful, because seeking to justify yourself for yourself is one thing. Seeking to justify yourself over and against other people is another. And a lot of us are very quick to look out and condemn other people because we want to justify ourselves. Oh, I've never committed that sin. And that's so the man asks, seeking to justify himself, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? And we have this wonderful explosion, I like to call it, in your mind and your heart as to who your neighbor really is. Pope Paul VI put it simply. He says, there is a center in every Christian relationship, and that center is occupied by the one most in need. And that one most in need is my true neighbor. So you could have a lot of other neighbors who are flourishing, who don't need anything from you. But if you want to know who your neighbor is before God, ask yourself, who of all these people around me is most in need? And there's a challenge here for all of us, And, well, you all know the story only too well, how the man he fell into the hands of brigands, so to speak, and once he fell into this state,
They beat him.
Yeah, they beat him up and so on. But what I really wanted to point out is that they leave him half dead. Half dead. Now, we pass over that. Mm-hmm. But, folks, think about what happens so often these days. You're driving on the road. You might even be walking, and there's an accident.
Yes, this week.
What do you do? What do you do? I was thinking about that the other day, and it struck me that we in Grenada don't have any problem, Because once there's an accident, everything stops. And you could be held up for an hour because you're waiting for the police to come. By the way, as an aside, I'd love to see that law changed. Because in an age of telephones with, these cell phones with picture-taking capacity, you should be able to take a few pictures and then let the traffic flow, rather than holding up things for an hour, because I've seen that happen, So, but the main point here is, what do we do? Once the traffic is flowing, you look, and you're gone. And that is expressed by that simple expression, which I love so much, pass by on the other side. One of these days I'm going to write a song about that. You know, there are many ways in which we pass by on the other side. You know.
Very good for Cali, good for...
I do.
I'll back you up.
You take it as much as wide as you can. You pass the other side. Yes, so that capacity always to pass on the other side is something that we all know as part of our human experience. But what then becomes further important is, I think I missed the page.
They want the compassion.
Yep, okay. What is also interesting is that the Samaritan takes full responsibility. And that is something we all have to ask ourselves as well. I may take somebody to the hospital after an accident, but so often I take them to the hospital and I leave them and I never see them again. Can we be the kind of Christian who, once you help somebody, you look forward to continuing to help insofar as that is needed?
Is that possible? Sometimes it's not possible. Yeah.
I know it's not possible all the time, but what I'm saying is it's something to think about.
Okay.
You know, it's not something that you should just say, okay, I leave you in the hospital. You know what we do then? We say, well, that is not my responsibility. That's the government's responsibility. When in fact, if the Lord has put this person across your path, it is your responsibility. And I've been very proud of some people who, they do a number of things. They drop the person in the hospital, if they can. They go back and see how the person is. And then, if the person is Catholic, they call the priest. If the person is not Catholic, they may call Reverend James or somebody from another church who is identified as being the person's pastor. These are the things that make a difference, you know. And it's amazing how God opens up things for us. Like I remember on one occasion going to meet somebody, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, this person is living in this. And because of that, a whole family issue came up. In this little, I like to call them gullies in Laventille. You go down inside the hills, on the hillside. And this house, this gully, had 20-something people living in it. I'd gone just to see the old lady, but the old lady had 6 grandchildren, 6 children, 20-something grandchildren. Of course, the sad part of it was there was no man in the house. The young boys were there, yes. But, so, the parable of the Good Samaritan invites us to understand the question, you know, and to really, above all as Christians, which of these, the last question, which of these 3 do you think proved himself a neighbor to the man who fell into the brigand's hands? Which of these? Can we really answer that question? Do we really believe in the answer that we are called to give in this parable? So, Christian life and witness is not easy. It's not easy at all. And I find more and more that I am challenged by it in my own life. And let me add one little point to that. When I was young, I would rush to fulfill this parable all the time. Now that I'm older, I can't rush to fulfill nothing. So you have to ask yourself, what do I do? You know, people like Mr. Filbert and myself, routine are not there yet. You know, we have to ask ourselves, when we come upon such situations, what do we do? For somebody like Mr. Filbert, the question is, have you passed on to the next generation, especially to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that sense of care? Because that is part of catechetics. You know, if you've been through a first communion or confirmation and you do not understand what the parable of the Good Samaritan means, you shouldn't be confirmed.
Foundation, service and mission.
Beg pardon?
I said there's a service dimension, service and mission.
So,
It was interesting that he said his heart was moved with compassion.
I'm glad you raised that. What's compassion?
Bishop used to describe it, I wonder if I remember now. It's something with your gut. It's like to have this experience. And he used to use this thing of your bowel and something. I don't remember exactly how he expressed it.
Yeah. The word in the Greek talks about your guts.
Yeah.
It's a movement in your guts.
Yes.
And sadly, I know some people refuse to be moved in their guts.
Why?
You know, because they don't trust other people, one. And then secondly, life has made them fundamentally self-centered. Yeah, right, you know.
Well, we got to pray for that.
Well, boy.
Bishop, you know, it's not easy. So thank you so much for this commentary. So much more in it for us. Thank God.
Read
for
it. The Good Samaritan is something you should read and reread and put yourself in the story.
Yes.
And, you know.
Yes. Let's take a short break to digest this. We will be right back because we're going to be shifting gears on some fundamental aspects of the church here, as dealing with the Synod document and something on the Conference on Theology in the Caribbean today. So we take a short break. We will be right back, listeners and viewers. Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to Conversation with our Bishop, 435-0143. And we'd like to shout out to our friends in the AC and those of you from the Caribbean who really listen to this program and find it, you know, beneficial in many ways. So we're going to move into the Synod document. I don't know if you were looking, but there is something called the Pathways. The Pathways. What again?
For implementing
implemented the Synod. Thought Synod was dead, but it's still alive. So say what the document has said.
Friends, we live in one of the most exciting times in the church in, I would say, a few centuries. Pope Francis, and some people say you have to take it right back to Pope Pius XII. Since the last century, the church has been challenged to how do you evangelize this world that is changing so rapidly? How do you bring people to faith, and more than that, to form communities of faith? So there's been a steady critique of what we've had over the years, but with it comes the challenge of how do we go forward? How do we go forward? And the Second Vatican Council began the movement, and where we are right now is that between Pope Paul VI and Pope Francis, we've come to a realization that we have to build up and deepen the local churches, the church which is headed by a bishop and which is supposed to be, wherever it is, the sign of the loving and saving presence of God. As a bishop, I am in awe of that, you know, and well, we can find another time to do that. But what we had was the Synod 2021 to 2024, which ended in Rome last year, but which, even in its drawing itself to a conclusion, said no, it can't stop here. It has to continue. And there is a call then to implement the vision of the Synod in the local churches, in every diocese, in every parish, and so on. And what is interesting, Pope Francis, at the end of the Synod, said, this is the ordinary magisterium of the church. This is magisterial teaching, which means that it is teaching that has become part of the church and our faith experience. One of the reasons why I put this up today is not only because the document appeared last Monday, but because I have become very upset by what I see as so many people being critical of the process, the whole process, and even encouraging people to not bother with this, to disobey it, and let's go back to what they're calling the traditional church. You know, they're saying the tradition, which very often is less than 1,000 years old, that is what we must hold on to for dear life. I will say some more about that over the next few weeks, but for now, what we have from Pope Leo, because while it was formulated in the latter days of Pope Francis, Pope Leo went to the Synod Secretariat and has really adopted the conclusions of the Synod as guidelines for his own pontificate. So he's calling us to go forward in faith. And I would hope that we can so organize things in this diocese that we really go forward in faith. I have my own challenges about the liturgy and so on. For instance, one of the things that those who are opposing this thing are saying very clearly, they're saying that all this drumming and so on in the liturgy, what we must have is a liturgy that is prayerful, that the atmosphere in the liturgy must be prayerful, that through the liturgy people must come to a deeper experience of God. All of that, yes, 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 all of that. But how we do it, that's the question. And we are called to listen to those who are willing to explore other experiences to come to. An example that is, for me, very pertinent is, can the drum be an entry point into prayer? You know? The Gregorian chant, which everybody acclaims and it sounds so beautiful and so on, that began in a particular space. It wasn't always there. The monks, in listening to their prayer, they entered into an experience of God, and they shared that experience with God with the whole church. Right? The church is now expanding in Africa, and we have to listen and to see whether in that expansion there is another voice of God to listen to as well. And sometimes I think, it would be such a beautiful thing if you had an organ concerto, if I might use that as an example, with drums. You know what? We have done something here in the Caribbean, thanks to a woman called Pat Bishop. The Hallelujah Chorus, which everybody says is a prayerful experience, an uplifting of the heart and the mind. What did she do? She brought in African drums and the tassa drum, right? And you listen to that, and it leaves you, lifts you out of yourself. So these are the challenges that we face. And to condemn it out of a certain prejudice, I don't think is right. We have to allow the work to go on. And many of those who are attacking what we've had over the last 50 years are attacking it, not wanting the work to happen at all. As far as they are concerned, there's one experience. So let me just outline here the points that are made in this document. First of all, we aim to nourish ourselves through prayer, right? In other words, everybody who wants to be part of the experience of synodality has to ask, how can we renew the prayer life of our communities? Who can be the animators of this? What can adopt in our liturgies to promote, what can we adopt in our liturgies to promote the participation of all and allow for greater interiority? A tremendous task. Because in the past, a lot of people thought, oh, the priest is the one who's praying. And there's a view which says the priest prays and we just sit down in the pews and try to look holy. And they are saying, no, you must allow people to come back to praying the rosary and so on. No, the aim of the church is in the Mass that all of us can celebrate the Eucharist, but there is a principal celebrant who is the priest or the bishop. Secondly, rediscovering the joy of being the people of God in solidarity with all humanity. And I would say in solidarity with all creation. The joy of being the people of God. Those of you who have listened to me over the years, I've added one word to my celebration of Mass, and that is after communion, joy. Because I've had this experience of what the joy of the Lord can be if we really enter into our celebration as a people. Bringing out the fact that baptism gives equal dignity to all Christians. Ooh, hot topic. Hot topic. Because some people want to have only certain people are up there and the rest of us are down there. How did we say it long ago? The people are supposed to pray, pay, and obey. And the priest is up there, so you pray with him, you pay to him, and you obey him. That's not the way the church should function anymore. Thirdly, participatory bodies, a way of ensuring that synodality is swiftly put into practice. This is going to be hard because I know a lot of people who, they don't like long conversation at all. And yet synodality at its best requires the conversation. It puts limits on the conversation, but it means you have to listen. So there are no fools in the Catholic Church. God can use any of us, right, to speak his word. A difficult role for a priest is to discern when somebody comes into the community in a way that is unconventional. What is God saying to us here? That's how I've been in the middle of that from time to time, you know. Wonderful. And then deepening, we have, deepening Christian unity. Deepening Christian unity. We in Grenada have been fortunate. We have a CCG. I've been chairman of it for the last 2 years. I haven't done the job I would have liked to do, but that's me. But we need to build that up, to give that some solidity and really to work together to develop, to articulate a vision for all Grenada as Christians. And then with religious communities, new communities and other places of church life. We are losing our various religious communities, yes, but maybe God is calling us to a different kind of religious community. And the question there is, are we hearing what the word of the Lord is about? You know, are we really listening? I think one of the things that I've been moved by recently is, what do we do in our schools? Are we forming in our schools religious communities of Christians, young Christians, you know, even as young as 7 or 8 if they're going to be making their first grade. But we teach them how to bear witness. And you don't make your confirmation unless you show a capacity to bear witness. All of this is part of the challenge, right? So we have a tremendous task ahead of us. This is what corresponds to the synodal style, which applies as well to the exercise of the Petrine office, Pope Francis said. Listening, convening, discerning, deciding, and evaluating. In these stages, pauses, silences, and prayer are necessary. It is a style that we learn together, little by little. So, brothers and sisters, Pope Leo has set us the task of finishing the work that Francis has begun, or rather I should say continuing. And over the next few weeks, a committee headed by Sister Roxanne, I hope working quite closely with them myself, will be able to see how the Catholic Church in Grenada can go forward in faith to build the kingdom that God is calling us to.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you. A lot to explore in this document, so it's available. So we got to move because we have a few minutes. Let's just take the conference on theology in the Caribbean.
Well,
I know Father Hugh is a representative, I think, and has been endowed with the ability to teach. I think he has some license for.
That's secondary.
Yes, but he also.
He is a part of it. He made a presentation. I didn't hear it, but.
Okay. So
the main thing of this is that a group of people, many of them lay people, meet together once a year to discuss what they see as insights, theological insights from life itself, the life experience of Caribbean people. We have a long way to go because it's only now really, but what is wonderful is that a number of people, you mentioned Father Hugh, we have a number of women who are very deeply involved in it. One of them is Dr. Anna Perkins from Jamaica, who was recently named by the university as the professor of Caribbean theology. Wow. You know, when we heard that, we said, wow. You know.
Who named Anna?
The University of West Indies.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that's the only university that can really claim the authority to do that kind of thing. You know. But it gives her a broader scope than just Catholic theology. So she has a tremendous task. But I'm hoping that some of the presentations will be made available so we can run them on GNCC.
I'd love to hear, because there was one held here some years ago.
Yes, 2 years ago.
All right. So you want to say something on Pope Leo? He's on vacation?
Yes, he's gone back.
Well,
he's gone back to vacation, something that Francis never took. But Leo wisely, of course, he plays tennis and so on, so he knows the need to, and he's younger than Francis as well. So he's trying to make sure he doesn't go old too quickly by taking an annual vacation. I need to do that myself. But what I wanted to also underline is that there's a lot of misinformation about Pope Leo on the internet. Yeah, a lot of misinformation. The AI, artificial intelligence, enables people to put Leo's voice, and you usually know if they're not running a live thing. Right. If you see just some pictures and some images, and then somebody talking in his voice, then you know it's not Leo really. Pope Leo.
It's solid stuff they're saying. Eh?
Yes, and they're putting on his lips stuff that want to convince some people in the church that this is what the Pope wants, when in fact the Pope has not made any decisions in that regard. They've gone so far as to say he has appointed this one to that position, and most of it is not true.
So they need to go to the authentic
website. Go to the Vatican website, right? And if you go to the Vatican website, you'll see what the Pope is actually doing.
Right. And let's wrap up on the whole question of the church here with the liturgy.
Well, I'll leave that for now because we have some work to do there. But to pick up where Michael left off, Michael was talking a bit about that. There are holiday programs in the parishes. A number of parishes, thanks be to God, organizing schools, weekday schools in catechetics and so on for their children. And I think that is absolutely wonderful, and I want to support that completely. So if something like that is going on in your parish, put some cash in an envelope and hand it to the parish priest or to whoever you know is running the thing, so that they have some more support. Some of them are not getting support from the parishes, some are. So any support you can give can help to deepen and broaden the experience for our children.
Yes, wonderful. We're going to take a break right now, Bishop. When we come back, we're going to wrap up with the two last points on this agenda, right? We're going to take a short break now, listeners and viewers. Listeners and viewers, to a conversation with our bishop. Quite interesting, you know, and the comments from Mr. Philbert and so on. And we do have a comment on the Facebook page that concerned our Catholic secondary school. Someone is just sharing that fact that in our former schools, there are a lot of non-Catholic teachers there than Catholic teachers. Almost 2/3 are non-Catholics. Who appoints is a question she asks, as referring to our Catholic schools. So we have a lot to pray for about the Catholic identity and ethos of our schools. So Bishop did raise it in the first segment, and again, it is not just for him to raise it, it is to raise awareness and a response, you know, to do something really structured sometimes, and to be the one to advocate for the change and the support that we're looking for. So right about now we want to shift, because in the midst of life there's death. And so Bishop would like to, on behalf of all of us, extend condolences to Special Priest Father Emmanuel Kufre on the death of his father.
Yes, on Monday, rather suddenly, according to the family, Daniel Okon, the father of Father Emmanuel Kufre. But those of you who know Father Kufre well will know that his full name is Emmanuel Kufre Okon.
Okay, I just
so
know
that's the way the African names are taken.
Okay.
But his father died suddenly in Nigeria, so we extend our condolences to him in this moment of grief. We don't know, he has to go for his father's funeral. There's no question about that in the best of the African tradition. He has to go, so he will be leaving us. I hope not too soon, but it takes several weeks to arrange a proper funeral in Nigeria. But Father, you are in our prayers. We want you to know that, and I know you will find a lot of support from your brother priests, especially those of your congregation, MSPs, and also from the rest of the church.
And to his family, those of you in Nigeria who are listening, again, as you heard Bishop, extending our deepest condolences and our prayerful support, you know, in this time of bereavement. Good. Then we wrap with Marian Devotion.
Yes,
continues.
Sunday, come in.
That's the third, and it's St. Andrew the Apostle responsible for all the various roles.
Father Daniel Mutia.
And Father Daniel, that's the parish priest of St. Matthew's, Birchgrove, will be preaching the homily on Sunday the 13th. So we are all encouraged to go out and to pray. Many of what Bishop has said, many points he's raised, invites us to serious prayer, you know, and seeking the intercession of Our Lady, not just like going through a motion, but you have raised a lot of issues here that's beyond us. And we really need to really enter deeply into prayer and to take these intentions as we go along on the pilgrimages throughout the year. So thank you for all that you have shared with us, Bishop, and we pray that we'll continue to respond really to the will of God and to see that the church grows. So listeners and viewers, thank you. Thank you for your participation, for your comments. Those who are listening, whether we know you or not, you are family. And so we thank you for being part of conversation. Thank you, Bishop, and may God continue to bless us. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will wrap up with the Jubilee song. Just to remind us that the Jubilee continues. God bless you all.